Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. We got a special episode today. My name is Chris Rice Crypto, and today I am joined by my friend Rob Harris. Rob, how you doing today, bro?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to finally be on here with you and get to know you and talk about the things that we are passionate about.
I agree. And, before we get into all that, what we're doing is we're going to be recording this and posting on each other's YouTube channel. So if you're watching this on my channel, I encourage you to check out Rob's channel, and I'll have links down below. And vice versa, if you're watching this on Rob's channel, please check out my channel, which is Rice Crypto. And if you can include links, I'd appreciate that. Mm-hmm. But the reason I wanted to do this little conversation with you, Rob, was because, we've been friends on social media for, I would say, at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And I've been catching a lot of your posts. I follow you pretty heavily. And we have a similar mindset. We're closer in age. And I wanted to talk about some things regarding economics, cryptocurrency, money, history of the Federal Reserve, without going into complete great detail, but just like a good summary and kind of like what got us to the point that the Federal Reserve was able to be created. So I appreciate you joining me, man. First thing I wanted to ask you before I guess we get into all of it, you tell me a little bit about your crypto background, and I'll follow up doing a little bit about the same.
Yeah. So I like to start, the first time I heard about Bitcoin was in 2012. And it was just on a radio program, and somebody just brought it up, and I didn't know what it was. And I thought it was a company that was trying to create their own digital currency. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, that's stupid. That's never going to catch on. And it wasn't until 2013 when Bitcoin went up, I don't know, it was 5,000% that year, I believe is what it was. And I read a headline of an article that pointed that out, and I was kicking myself. I'm like, okay, what the heck is this Bitcoin? So this is at the very end of 2013. And a little bit about my background, I actually went to school in California to learn how to build computers. That's where I'm originally from. I now live in Seattle, and I've been in Seattle since 2003. But when I first caught wind of Bitcoin and started actually researching it, I was pretty blown away. And I wished I had got ahead of 2013, and because I would have been mining it in the earlier days. So I was a little bit late to the game on the mining, but I started off mining Litecoin, again, December 2013. And I did that for a couple of months. My wife probably thought I was crazy. She had no idea. I had this computer that I had built that was completely open with all these graphic cards on top. And I tried to explain to her I'm mining this digital currency called Litecoin. And it's producing crazy noise, a lot of heat, but I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. I'm figuring, how the whole mining process works. I'm having a fight with my computer because it gets overheated and then it shuts off. But it was a fun little journey. And I did that for a couple months. And then what I really wanted was Bitcoin. But the reason why I chose Litecoin at the time, because I'd done enough research to know that Litecoin was an easier coin back then to mine versus Bitcoin, which was already getting very popular. And I ended up converting my Litecoin through a exchange. And I can't remember what it was. I don't think it was Mt. Gox, but it was right before Mt. Gox collapsed. But I was fortunate enough to get into an exchange, convert it to Bitcoin, and then put it on a paper wallet. I'd done enough research at the time to know that was probably one of the safest places to keep it for long-term cold storage. Mm-hmm. I laminated it. And then I stuck it in my sock drawer, and I just kind of left it there because, as we all know, in 2014, Mt. Gox collapsed, and then the value of Bitcoin went from, it was 1,000 something down to 200. And, I at that point just kind of moved on. I kept my eye on the cryptocurrency market, but I had other things that I was into, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. So at that time, I was actually building a window company, window installation. And before that, I had done online marketing. I built a software company that worked off of MySpace and YouTube and Twitter. I don't have any of those programs anymore today, but I do have something for Instagram. But I'm a little over the place. But that's just kind of my background is computers, marketing, and that sort of thing. But it wasn't until the tail end of 2016 that Bitcoin caught my attention again. And this is kind of where our paths ended up crossing. You know, I mean, I hate what happened, so I kind of hate sharing this story, but it's a part of my story, so I got to just share it.
And it's good to be honest too.
Yeah.
I think I know where you're going, which can help me to kind of talk about some things too.
Yeah, and I think this is a good place to start, and this is kind of, where we ended up getting to know each other. But at the time, I had someone who I considered a friend, and I'm sure people recognize the name Jock Paradise. And we had a CBD hemp online business together. And we were introduced through a company called Janess, so network marketing. That's how we ended up meeting. And at the time, I thought, he was a great guy. He had some severe injuries, was missing a leg, had a metal plate in his head, and I knew he was taking the CBD, so I knew it was helping him. And at the time, actually, I was convinced that he was a veteran, that he actually had served in the military. So, I felt I was doing a good deed working with this individual. But he had hinted that he had something really big with cryptocurrency coming. And I have a few friends that at the time were already really successful in the cryptocurrency space. And I said, well, hey, when you're ready to launch this thing, just let me know and I'll introduce you. And long story short, that company ended up being Trade Coin Club, which I had no idea would become what it became. And I got to see something that got so big and it hurt so many people. And it devastated me because, I had introduced a few friends to it, and I know a few people who got severely hurt by that venture. And
Right.
I was at least, doing my due diligence, asking the right questions. And when red flags started to pop up, I was raising my voice. I remember I called the company out in September of 2017. My video had 15,000 views, and it got their attention. And I was hoping.
Well, let's also real quick just clarify too that we're talking about an MLM, which ended up, in my opinion, turning out to be a Ponzi scheme.
Ended up being a Ponzi.
And most cryptocurrency MLMs, from what I can tell, end up turning out to be Ponzi schemes. And when I first got into the space, that was one of the things that I had heard about was these type of programs, these doublers, these investment programs that give returns. And I got a little greedy, thinking I could make a little bit of investment, get a better return, and didn't realize what I was getting into. Once I realized what I was getting into, then the game just changed because I didn't want anything to do with anything MLM. And I just wanted to get involved in cryptocurrency for the freedom aspect, the aspect of getting away from things like the US dollar. Me as an anarchist, as a voluntarist, which could be summarized as a form of libertarianism, there's a lot of things I don't believe in with our government. And when I was introduced to cryptocurrencies going to school as well for business administration, it was just perfect for me. So I'm kind of became more of a crypto anarchist, crypto enthusiast, and try to educate people. Don't try to charge for it. I do personal consultations, which is a completely different thing, not financial advice. But the freedom aspect is what I started going down the rabbit holes once I got away from all that dark, greedy, schemy crap.
Right.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. I just felt just a minute to clarify that just for a sec.
And I think you and I are on a similar path. So after witnessing what happened, it wasn't just that company. There was a laundry list of companies in 2017. It was.
I mean, everybody knows about BitConnect, but there was things like Gladia Coin,
USI Tech, Gladia Coin, all these things. In fact, there really is no excuse today, unless somebody wasn't around in 2017, to even be attempting to participate in any company that's claiming to trade for you. That's basically offering what we can now for sure say are securities. In 2017, I would say the general population, myself included, were naive. I can speak for myself, believed it was an unregulated market. I didn't really understand how securities worked anyways. And so that wasn't on my immediate radar in terms of a red flag. But now I recognize what that is. And I've been calling it out. So, there's some companies right now that are very questionable. And I don't want to doubt that maybe they have technology that's there. And I'll call this company out right now. There's a company I've been questioning on my Facebook page recently called Cloud Token. And maybe they are trading. Maybe they've got an amazing wallet system. My only issue is that there are people that are in the United States that are making income claims, 10 to 15% per month. And when you do that, you got to have a securities license. You're promoting a security. That's what it is.
Right.
I actually started a study for my Series 6, and I think at some point, I would like to take the test, and I wouldn't mind being kind of I don't want to be a financial advisor, but at least a guide. I still tell everybody everything in this cryptocurrency space right now is gambling. It's like, we're in a glorified casino, and some of these things are going to take off great somewhat. And I'm really just talking about the coins, not these companies that are trading for you. I think there's more value in people learning how to trade for themselves. And that's actually been the mission that I've been on since the beginning of last year up till now.
Yeah. I think I tell people they need to educate themselves. They need to do their own research, because ultimately when you get involved in Bitcoin, when they talk about being your own banker, you are your own banker. You are now responsible for yourself. And some people just aren't ready for that responsibility, but they need to be educated and realize that responsibility is needed, and it's time to grow up, put your big boy pants on, and do things the right way, and don't rely on the traditional banking system that we rely upon. Now, when you talked about something like Cloud Token, in my opinion, just off the little bit of stuff that I researched, it's definitely one of those Ponzi schemes as well, in my opinion. But there are wallets like Monarch and Celsius that do give you a return for holding your tokens in their wallet, and they are legitimate companies. So if you do your own research, and this isn't anything referral or MLM based, unlike how Cloud is, and there's a couple others like that, but they're MLM based. You can make extra income off of referring people. Monarch and Celsius are not like that. You're not getting a kickback. They simply offer a service that you can take advantage of. Now, you have to provide KYC. That's just part of the law. So if you want to take advantage of the interest on these wallets, you have to go through the proper guidelines that regulation requires, or these companies wouldn't be able to operate in the United States.
Right.
So I guess to kind of like move along, because that is a kind of a sore spot, but I think we both have learned from it and have turned it around and turned that mistake into something that we can hopefully prevent others from making that same mistake.
Right. Exactly. And it was an educational experience, unfortunately. And yeah, today, for anyone that was around 2017, there's just no longer an excuse. And so I'm happy that there's not as much as there used to be. And really, I think people are kind of creatures of habit. So that's part of the problem. Instead of holding on to their own private keys, they want to just give it to someone else to hold or trade and do that for them. And that's where, what you were just saying, you got to learn just to, step up and take responsibility. You are your own banker now. Hold on to your own private key. You don't need some trading bot or whatever. If you buy Bitcoin, if you would have bought it earlier this year for $3,500 without recruiting a single person, just sitting on it, you would have more than doubled.
Mm-hmm. Which is more than most traders do.
Yeah, that's it. So that to me is the bigger picture, and you don't need to get sidetracked with all these other things. The second you give away your private key, it's no longer yours.
No longer yours. It's like giving somebody your debit card and your PIN number.
Exactly. And people learned that lesson the hard way, in 2014 with Mt. Gox. They didn't have enough Bitcoin to back up what was showing when you logged into your account. Right. I don't think they were hacked. I actually think that they were acting like a fractional reserve bank. They had not as much Bitcoin as they were displaying in people's back office. And then when Bitcoin went over $1,000, I think some really large wells started to cash out, and they didn't have enough to supply everybody. I believe that was at least one element of what caused that whole thing to go
Well, in my opinion, I believe that fractional banking system that we're talking about, the fractional reserve banking, I believe is taking place in the majority of our exchanges that are trading cryptocurrency to this date, because you're seeing conflictions in market cap totals and volumes from different exchanges, from different platforms, from different like things like crypto, coin market cap and coin gecko, on-chain FX. They're all like displaying different information. There's not a lot of accuracy. And then you had like the whole issue with the Bitfinex scandal with printing up more tether, the volume being incorrect on there. So it was Trace Mayer, I believe, the beginning of this year, who was trying to encourage people on, I think it was the anniversary of the Genesis block, if I'm not mistaken, had encouraged people to withdraw their crypto out of the exchanges to make the exchanges show that they're legitimate. Now, of course, not everybody withdrew their funds, but that works the same way with our banking system. With fractional reserve banking, if people don't understand fractional reserve banking, you definitely need to educate yourself on this. It's not something that can just be explained super easy, except for the fact that when the banks have X amount of money, they're allowed to make that more money out of nothing, just to make it simple. So if I have $10, I can make that $100 now available to my bank, and I only have $10 to work with. So it's making money out of thin air, which devalues the dollar bills that we already currently have in place. And then we have more bills being printed up, which devalue the bills that we currently have already out, which creates this monster that we call inflation. So
it's crazy. And then you get into derivatives,
that's like, I kind of want to do Eco 101. If we go, derivatives might be like 103 or 104, but that's a whole nother story. I mean, even like if people want to look up derivatives and Deutsche Bank and look at the current status of Deutsche Bank and them being the largest holder of derivatives, you just, the math just kind of comes to you like where this is headed. So
yeah, there's a short, it's an animated cartoon on YouTube. It's free, called The American Dream. So for anybody that's watching this, just go to YouTube, type in The American Dream. It's a cartoon, 30 minutes long, but it goes over the whole history of the Federal Reserve Bank and also fractional banking and all that. It's actually pretty well done.
That's cool. I'll try to find it and include links down below too.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So what are your thoughts on our grand old US dollar and our Federal Reserve?
Well, I've been posting for a while that I believe in 2021, so we're just 2 years away, that our government's going to, well, number one, I believe Trump will get reelected. I don't think there's going to be anybody that could even challenge that. So I believe he'll be reelected. And in the beginning of his second term, I believe he's going to nationalize the Federal Reserve. But before that happens, there needs to be an event. And I think we're going to see something very similar to what we saw in 2008, and which will make it easy because nobody's going to want to go for bailing out the banks again after 12, 13 years later.
Not anybody in their right mind.
Nobody in their right mind. So when that happens, it's going to bring a lot of attention to the Federal Reserve System, and questions are going to start to come up. Why are we still using this? I mean, their whole mandate was to avoid inflation. We've lost 97% of the value of the dollar since 1913 until today, and it's no longer backed by gold. And it amazes me. I still have people I talk to that say, "Well, I trust the dollar because at least it's backed by gold," and I'm thinking, it hasn't been that way since 1971.
Okay, now you say we've lost how much since when?
Since the creation of the Federal Reserve System in 1913, the dollar has lost over 97% of its value. So the purchasing power.
Right. Now, see this stuff, like as soon as you would say these kind of subjects to me in the past, I would be like all yawny or look away, tried to avoid this conversation because it sounded really boring. But I think that we're kind of being taught to make us think that it's boring so that we don't understand what all that means. And try to breaking it down in a simple way that I try to explain to people is, and I'm not sure if this figure is exactly correct, but let's say in 1920, you could purchase 20 loaves of bread for $1 or 15 loaves of bread for $1. now you can't even really purchase a day old loaf of bread at a bakery for $1. So what has changed? Because the price of water and yeast has not gone up. Those kind of things have not changed ever in the whole history of our planet. Like, it's just remained the same. It's a very simple product. What's taken place is the value of our dollar bill, which is what you said, losing purchasing power. And I've seen that more and more in my lifetime. I remember candy bars being 50 cents. I remember comic books being $1 or 75 cents. I know things were cheaper prior to that, but this is what I remember. You know, I just the gas price differences from when I was a teenager to today, and how much it's changed, gone up, gone down, and all the things that I've seen. But they all want to make the media, when I say they all, the governments, they all want to imply that it's something other than the money losing purchasing power. They want to blame it on everything else and try to keep people distracted as to what the actual truth is, which is insane.
Yeah. Well, we'll just think, go back to 1950s, early 60s, and let's say somebody was making a silver dollar per hour, $1 silver dollar. Well, that dollar, if it was paid in just paper, what can a dollar buy today? You can't buy practically anything. But that silver dollar, I believe it was an ounce, right? It was a whole ounce. So, and silver today, an ounce of silver, what is $15, $16?
Right under 15. It's actually a pretty great buying price.
It's ridiculous how low it is. And that's a whole other topic. I believe it's being suppressed big time. And part of that's the manipulation. And I know derivatives, which we don't want to really dive into in this one, but they're manipulating the price of it pretty low. But that being said, $15 an hour, that's what minimum wage is being pushed, around the country. Mm-hmm. So that had a backing back then, which would still be good today, if that's what you were getting paid in. But now we're getting paid in these paper notes that aren't backed by anything. So if you had $20,000 in cash that you had just, stored under your bed or your mattress for, the last 20, 30 years, it's lost significant value. Where meanwhile, if you had gold, silver, things that actually, have had value for thousands of years, those things are going up. So, we have to get back to sound money again. And that's exactly what I believe is going to happen. Before Trump leaves office, I believe we're going to have a gold-backed dollar. But it's not going to be a Federal Reserve note anymore. I believe it's going to be converted into a Treasury Reserve note that will be backed by gold.
Which were like, I can grab, I think I have one actually really super handy because I like showing these when I can. I got it in glass, but this is a silver certificate.
Yes.
It's a Treasury note. So it's not something from the Federal Reserve. And you used to be able to take these and cash these in for silver or gold, but thanks to our awesome president Nixon. So let's back up, man. We don't have to go real far, but you said 1913 was the creation of the Federal Reserve, which comes into the Federal Reserve Act. Yes. What I would love to encourage people to do, check out a guy named Mike Maloney. He's got an awesome series, about 10 videos called The Hidden Secrets of Money, I believe is what it's called. And I'll put links down below for that. That's a really great way to educate yourself about the history of money, getting understanding of what the differences of money and currency are, getting a comparison to how the Roman government was in the fall of Rome and what's happening to the United States and how they compare. But I also want to encourage people to check out a book that I've been just recently starting to read that was given to me as a gift, is G. Edward Griffin's book, Creature from Jekyll Island. Because this kind of is, I think, the Bible for what we're talking about. If you really want to dig deep and you want to get all the details about this and how deep the rabbit hole goes, because once you get in that part of the rabbit hole, and if you are even interested, there's way more deeper rabbit holes for you to follow. But so in 1913 was the creation of the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve Act. And then we had, after that, start losing purchasing power slowly. We're still backed by gold, still backed by silver, because this is all constitutional. We had the Great Depression. And then after the Great Depression, In 1933, FDR did the Executive Order 6102, which made it illegal for people to own gold anymore. So some people are even unaware of this scenario. Back in the 30s, 33, it was made illegal for U.S. citizens to have to hold gold. They had to sell their gold back to the government. And once the government had gotten control of the gold, which gave them backing for our dollar, they then increased the value of the gold and basically screwed the people. So, and this is just, something that just gets forgotten because all the old people die away.
I've been posting about that recently. Yeah, May 1st, 1933. And it's mind-blowing. I mean, just imagine in today's world.
The Gold Reserve Act, the Emergency Banking Act, they're all three together. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But just imagine that, in today's world, a president, declaring, hey, we're going to basically steal all your gold. And if you don't turn it in, then, I mean, they paid for it, right? I guess they paid whatever was worth it.
I think it was like $20 an ounce. And then
an ounce, yes.
Confiscated it. It jumped to 40.
Jumped to 40 after they confiscated it.
Right. So after they owned it, it's like, oh, we're just going to increase the value of it.
Well, because, that was the official, the first part of moving away from the gold standard. So it used to be $20 was an ounce of gold, and it was just pegged at that. Mm-hmm. And then it went to, I guess you could say, a fractional reserve or fractional backing with gold, so they can manipulate the numbers and increase more of the money supply. And then in 71, they got rid of the money supply, the gold backing completely. So the money supply just went out of control, and then that's where inflation really gets kicked in.
And we're getting right into going to that Nixon thing, but in between the issue of the confiscation of gold, which was the Executive Order, the Gold Reserve Act, and the Emergency Banking Act, in 1944 is when we established when Bretton Woods was established. And that's important because that is what established the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. That is, I believe, when things started getting worse, in my opinion, because that's what led to, in 1971, which is what you were talking about. People, I think, call it the Nixon Shock, because he literally made an announcement saying we're going off the gold standard. And what I don't get about that is the Constitution of the United States says that all money being produced is supposed to be backed by gold and silver. So how can you constitutionally take us off the gold standard? But I understand the mentality behind it. It's not right. It's not correct. I understand it. But that's what led us. That's what caused the problems to get us to where we are now, in my opinion.
Yeah, we've had there's no easier way to say it. We've had bad people running this country for a long time. And as you go down this rabbit hole, you start to just learn things that are just mind-blowing. But I would argue that the original United States lasted about 95 years, from 1776, and you could argue, 1865 when Lincoln was killed, and then shortly afterwards when they did the Act of 1871, which I don't know if we really want to dive too deep into it, but basically,
that's what gave the permission for the Federal Reserve and taxation of labor and all the amendments they made to our Constitution. That's what made that allowable.
That's what made it all possible. It turned our country into a corporation. And, Washington, D.C., it's not a state. It's a 10-mile square radius. It's basically owned by a bunch of international bankers. And so there's been quite a few major events. So starting with 1871 and then leading up to 1913 when the Federal Reserve was created, which is a private bank. These are private bankers. This is not
a conglomerate of private bankers. So it's basically a banking cartel.
The banking cartel, the name is misleading. It's not federal. They have no reserves. It has never been audited.
They're not allowed to be audited. What do you mean?
And Woodrow Wilson, our president at that time, he sold us out. And what happened was these bankers were smart, and they've been trying to do this in our country since day one, since 1776. Andrew Jackson was the last president that actually got rid of our second central banking system. Mm-hmm. That was in the 1830s. And so we didn't have one until 1913. So he was successful for that period of time. And of course, they never give up. They're persistent. And there was a crash in 1907. And so there was people that weren't trusting the banks. And so they sold the Federal Reserve System and used that name to trick people to think that, okay, this is part of the federal government. And they're going to basically make sure that the local banks are not manipulating the currency and in the market and messing with people. That's how it was sold to the people. And then you go into the 1920s where putting money onto a stock was so easy. They had it to where you only needed 10%. So just imagine you want to buy 100 shares of Apple today, and you only needed to come up with 10% of the total value of all those stocks. The bank would finance the other 90%. So there was a huge credit bubble that was being created in the 1920s. And that's why we had the roaring 20s and people were having all these ridiculous parties, and it was good times. And, everybody just believed in the stock market. And these bankers, these big players in Wall Street, they knew what they were doing, and they quietly exited the stock market in October of 1929 and allowed this whole thing to crash. And when it crashed, all these people were left, with stocks that were not worth, anything compared to exactly. And so they had to sell their farms and their land and all that stuff. It was all foreclosed on. So then these
they owed the banks.
Yeah, these bankers came in and they bought everything up, pennies on the dollar. And it was planned that way. And then in 1933, Roosevelt, signed that executive order, and then they stole our gold. These people robbed us. And the other thing was in the 1920s, there was this middle class that was starting to gain a little bit of political ground. And when the stock market crashed and they lost everything, they were no longer relevant. They were no longer a threat to challenge these people that really had been in control of this country, I would say, since shortly after Lincoln was killed. I think that was a coup. Our country got taken over back then. And there's been a fight. There's been a struggle. There's been good people within our military that have been trying to win the United States back. I think John F. Kennedy was the last president that actually truly tried to free us. And we all know what happened to him, But the biggest thing for people to look at is the executive order he signed, 11110, which was done on June 4th, 1963, which would have allowed the U.S. Treasury to create silver certificates, interest-free money. Interest-free is the key here. The problem with the Federal Reserve System, and I usually like to do this with like $100 bill. I don't have one handy, but let's just pretend this is $100 right here.
Okay.
But I like to give this analogy just because it paints a good picture so people could understand how their system works. But if you go back to 1913, when the U.S. government took the very first $100 loan out of the Federal Reserve Bank, they had to pay this $100 back plus interest. So there's no other money in circulation. This is the very first $100 bill. How in the heck are they going to pay $100 plus, let's say, 10% back?
Right.
Where does that extra $10 come from? The only answer is they have to continue to borrow more money from this Federal Reserve banking system.
It's a debt-based system that keeps you economically enslaved to it.
Exactly. And by 1933, the United States became bankrupt to the system. And this is how they operate. It's not just the United States. This is what they did in Zimbabwe and all these other countries. They go in there, they bribe the leaders of those countries, with big suitcases of money, or they threaten their family, whatever, they bribe them. And so then they agree, they get on the central banking system, they overinflate their currency, and then they say, okay, Zimbabwe, you guys are in debt to us. How are you going to pay us back? Oh, you know what? We'll just come in and take over all your natural resources. And that was their intention all along, because these things aren't meant to last forever. Eventually they do implode, but it's a way to siphon wealth out of a country.
That's what China's doing to Africa right now.
Exactly. So we got to get out of those systems, which is something I recognized with cryptocurrency, and that's why I'm passionate about it. And it's not just having a currency that's outside of government, but it's the blockchain. I recognized early on that if we wanted to have an honest election, that the blockchain would be a fantastic solution.
Let me correct you. A decentralized blockchain.
Yes.
Because it has to be decentralized. I mean, there are such things as centralized blockchains. So that's the other thing I like people to understand is the difference between centralization and decentralization. Because our problem right now is because of centralization. Blockchain, a way that Satoshi Nakamoto had created for Bitcoin, is a decentralized blockchain, which is a solution against the centralized things that me and Rob are talking about right now.
Exactly. The problem with the centralization is it breeds too much corruption and power. You know, there's what the quote, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
And
even the people who fight against corruption, who obtain the power, become corrupted. So it's like that cycle. I also compare that to Star Wars with like how the Force is and how you seem like people go from dark side to good, and how it's flipped and the energy is flipped, and it's kind of just a good comparison to where we're at.
It's a great comparison. You know, as you travel further down that rabbit hole, and it gets pretty deep, you start to realize that at the very top of this whole thing, there's some pretty evil people. That power goes to their head. I don't know what it is, but it gets pretty bad. But I see things flipping, and as all that gets more exposed and it comes to light, I think we're going to transition into a greater period of time. I see it. We're right on that verge, right on the cusp.
I agree. And I think too, it takes like conversations like this and people like us and other people who are waking people up, trying to educate people, trying to let people know the truth of the situation. I think that's like probably the most important part of getting to that level you're talking about, where we actually achieve this. We need to wake up. I mean, the Matrix is a great comparison. If you watch the movie, the red pill, blue pill, your choice, we're right there. You know, are you choosing to live ignorant to the system that's destroying humanity, or are you going to wake up and be a part of that change? And that's why I wanted to have you on, dude. I mean, like everything you said is like just been, I mean, I'm smiling at the time, but it's like you're speaking inside of my head, saying things in similar ways or a different way, but the same message. And I love it, dude. That's why I wanted to do this, because I feel like I really hope that if you're watching this and you're gaining value, that we're helping to educate you, and you can share this information with your friends, subscribe to our channels, like, and all that good stuff. I don't want to wrap up this second. I just want to say that one thing I wanted to ask you real quick, because you were talking about 2008 and how we could see a similar crash to 2008. Mm-hmm. I've done a couple of interviews with Lynette Zay, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lynette, but she works with ITM Trading, which is a precious metals buyer seller, and she's an analyst, and she's been involved in stock markets, and she's been involved in banking since banking and stock markets since like the 60s and the 80s. So she's been involved in the system for quite a while. And in her opinion, and I have to say that I agree, I don't think that we've ever actually recovered from 2008. I feel like we've done a Band-Aid to try to mask the problem and try to make it better. And I think that's what's going to help us have that other crash. And we can get into elements of that. But do you feel like that we have recovered from 2008? Or what do you feel like the status is after 2008 to today?
Well, I don't think there was ever an intention for there to be a real recovery. All they did was kick the can down the road and bought us a little bit more time. I do find it interesting that cryptocurrency, well, Bitcoin specifically, the white paper came out, 2 months after the crash in September of 2008, 2 months later. And so I believe that, I mean, we don't really know who created it, but I believe it happened for a reason. And I believe a big part of the new economy is going to be the blockchain and cryptocurrency, the CTO, which is, STO, security token offerings. Mm-hmm. all of Wall Street being converted over into some type of token on a blockchain where it's all accounted for. But anyways, going back to your question, all fiat currency has an expiration date. And if you go to Google and type in the average lifespan of a fiat currency, it's 27 years. 27 is the average. We're way past that. 1971 until now, we're way past that. So I believe right on the 50th anniversary, that's when our transition out of the fiat Federal Reserve System into a gold-backed Treasury Reserve System is going to take place. I don't know exactly how it's going to look. I know if people at least plan ahead and you're buying gold, silver, even some cryptocurrency, that's the best you can do. And I think you're going to actually do very well compared to those that do nothing. If you do nothing, one of the ways that this could look is there could be a conversion of, for every 10 Federal Reserve notes, you get $1 of the new Treasury Reserve gold-backed currency.
Right.
That'd be one way to do it. I believe a lot of the debt that we have is just going to be wiped clean. It's going to go to zero. I mean, if we were to pay all the debt back anyways, there'd be no currency left.
Right. Well, you can't. And that's what I tried to explain to one of my economics teachers. Like our debt-based system is created to, if you pay all debt, there is no money.
And that's why I like to share that $100 bill example with 10% interest, but there's no other currency yet. So
it makes sense. I like that.
From the very beginning, it's set up to where it's impossible to pay back. So, but that system's going to come to an end. And we've had a group of people that have been steering us towards like a one world government with a one world currency. And their plan to do that has failed. It's failed. You look around the world, countries are moving back towards nationalism, and we're going to, Japan and all these countries, they're going to become independent with their own currency and no longer using the dollar as a world reserve currency anymore,
right.
Which is a good thing. It's a good thing.
Very good thing.
So it's what's enslaving us right now. You have to wrap your mind around this. Income tax, for example. We're working almost 4 months out of the year to pay income tax. Now, I would feel better about it if I knew that my income taxes were going towards building roads or, schools, whatever.
Teachers, what they need to be paid.
But those things are already being collected, number one, from property tax or gas tax or whatever. We have a ton of other taxes. But Reagan already told us in the 1980s that 100% of our income tax is just going towards paying the interest off the money that our government owes to the private Federal Reserve System.
For printing up money that we don't necessarily ask to be printed up.
So what John F. Kennedy attempted in 1963, and what I see happening in 2 years from now, it's going to be a big deal because we're talking about interest-free money. Our government's not borrowing it. They've got the gold, they got the silver to back it up. They're not borrowing it from some third party. So there's no interest attached. There won't be a need for an IRS for an income tax. The income tax passed the same time that the Federal Reserve System passed in 1913.
Taxation of our labor was not supposed to be our founding fathers' goal at all, and where we were at. We were only supposed to be taxed on our goods and services, but taxation of our labor was not supposed to take place. And like you said, 4 months of a year, that's a quarter of your paycheck, minimum. Some people are getting a third of their paychecks taken.
Yeah, so we were turned into collateral. When our government went bankrupt in 1933, the American people were turned into collateral on the debt that was owed to these private banks. And that's why we're paying, 4 months out of the year to people that don't even live in our country. They don't even have our country's best interest in mind. It's a sad thing when you realize that. You're like, whoa, we were born into a system where we're all debt slaves to these people living in, other parts of the world. They're scattered around. It's not just Europe. It's, it's all, all around other places around the world. But that's what's being fought right now. And I believe we're right at the tail end of it. It's an amazing time to be alive. And I feel good. I feel good because I got to tell you, 2006 was when I first started to wake up to all this. And then I watched Aaron Russo had a documentary, I think it came out in 2007 with Ron Paul, Freedom to Fascism, great film. And that's when I started to get a real good look at what this Federal Reserve System was. And it was starting to look bleak back then, I'll tell you. But not anymore. I see.
It's like a light at the end of the tunnel. I see hope.
I see hope. Me too.
And yeah, that's why I wanted to create my YouTube channel. It's why I try to put myself out there. It's why I try to stand up for the things I believe in, try to interview and talk to the people that I'm able to talk to, is because I want to be able to share this with people. I feel led to help make a little bit of a difference. And at the same time, I talk about my practice change stuff. And I really want to take that quote from Gandhi, to be the change that you want to see in this world. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I know I could tell from you, it's what you're trying to do. You're trying to be the change that you want other people to make. But you can only do that by actually taking the action yourself and being the actual change and being an example for other people to see.
Exactly. And, it's been a humbling just experience, just getting, to where I'm at in life, and the people I know I've influenced and have helped. I get a lot of nice, positive private messages from people, and I just try to post truth. And not everybody's there yet to really accept or wrap their mind around a lot of things that you and I are talking about, just because they're not going to teach us in school our real history. They're not. So when you realize that this country, really, there was a coup in the 1860s, it was taken over, and there's been a battle ever since, but with the bad guys pretty much dominating all the way up until now. It's a lot for people to wrap their mind around. You mean the people on CNN are not actually they're looking out for us? They're just putting out propaganda? Yes, it's propaganda. That's what it is. You got to turn that off. You got to start looking, outside of the.
Check out alternative media, just independent media. Get away from your network television media, because all these companies are owned by just small group of companies, like companies over top 6. Okay, that's what I was thinking. It's a very small number, but all these
6.
And we're talking not just television. We're talking about print, radio, any form of media. They own 6 companies, the majority, and it's extremely sad.
These people have got themselves into a really high position of power and control over us, and so their biggest fear, has been losing. They don't want to lose that power, and so all this stuff, all this information that we're being fed with, it's intentional. Our history books, it's not giving us the full truth of what our history is. And George Orwell said it best, in his 1984 book, those who control the past control the future, and those who control the present now control the past. You got to look outside of what's being fed to us through the government, funded educational system. And G. Edward Griffin that you were talking about with the Creature of Jekyll Island. And there's just a laundry list of people we can name that are going to help, I guess, really paint the picture of what really happened and what took place. But it all stems from the Federal Reserve System. That's like the heartbeat of it all. It's like the engine of their machine. And as soon as we are able to take that down, I can't even describe it. We're going to experience something that we never imagined in our lifetime we would. We're going to finally experience what it's like to be free. Just imagine not paying income tax anymore and actually keeping, all the money that you've worked for, with your labor. You're supposed to.
You're supposed to. I mean, we're supposed to. We value our labor by taking money that's basically monopoly money, and we're losing value, or we're in a system that's designed not to save money. It's just sick, dude. So I mean, yes. I think the dialogue that we've created here, man, has been like a wealth of information. I've learned a little bit of stuff. I really appreciate it, and I'd like to do this more. I mean, I know we had talked about doing this, and there's issues on my end that prevented it. Then I had the internet go out on me on Monday, which is a completely different story. But I'm glad we got to do this. I guess it's going pretty long. I want to make sure we wrap it up to keep people's attention span. So I want to do this again soon, and we can continue off this and then just continue to promote the videos beforehand if people aren't getting what we're talking about, and try to progressively get a little bit more detailed with some of the things that we're talking about. But dude, I appreciate, again, what I want to ask everybody is, if you're watching us on either one of our channels, please check out the other one's channel. If you like what we're talking about, please support us by subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. All these kind of things help other people to be able to see these videos in a YouTube stream, because the algorithms are set against us. So the more that you can participate and help and with our channels, the more that other people are going to be able to see this. So is there anything you want to say before we wrap up, dude?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. And yeah, I'm going to be making a lot more videos now. So I've been a little bit quiet, doing a few things privately, but I'm glad you had me on here, and I would love to come back soon.
Let's keep each other's fires lit, man.
Yep.
I mean, we got to have a support network for individuals like us too, because, and you might be able to agree with this, this takes its toll on me a lot of times, because I care so much for other people that sometimes I have to just take a back step and get away and just like give me my time for a little bit, because I try to give so much to other people, not necessarily monetarily, but emotionally and mentally. And so, you know, I appreciate you, man, and I appreciate all the other people that try to help keep me uplifted, and I try to uplift other people. And I try to remind us all that we're human beings, that we should treat each other how we want to be treated. And there shouldn't be any other excuse for that. We shouldn't be violent. We should live in a voluntary society, in my opinion. And I think that we all need to be the change that we want to see in this world, and quit bitching and complaining about things that we don't like, and do something about it and practice change. That's what I call it. So thanks again, everybody. I appreciate. Give that thumbs up, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And as always, I love you. Be the change. We're practicing change.
All right. I'll see you.
All right, dude.
Hey everyone, I want to make this quick disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor. Always do your due diligence, especially when it comes to cryptocurrency. Never invest any money into cryptocurrency that you're not willing to lose. These markets are unpredictable. They go up, they go down. And other than that, if you're enjoying my videos, please feel free to share them, and I look forward to making the next one.